Hey y'all, it's Miranda. Happy December and happy holidays. We are officially at the second to last of this series for a whole year of 5 artists of every month. So I really wanted to make it special and kind of take my time with this one. I will say this is definitely more of a dramatic listing for December. I wanted to make it a little bit more ambient and melancholy. To be completely honest, I feel like this has been one of the hardest end of the years for me, even given how 2020 went and even 2021. So I wanted to kind of express that in a therapeutic way, if you will, and showcase some artists that have more of that in touch atmosphere with the melancholy and the dark nature of all things to do with life. But nonetheless, I still wanted to celebrate this month and of course celebrate the year and just get excited that I'm almost done with this series. I only have January left to do 5 last artists of the month for the rest of the year, since I started in February. So I am super excited for that, and I definitely want to express that in this video. So yeah. So let's delve right into the first artist that I have on my list, which is a classic Italian painter. He's an artist who I grew up in college learning about through my standard history classes in terms of art. And this particular iconic and controversial Italian painter is of course Michelangelo Maisi da Caravaggio, or of course just Caravaggio. He gives me a certain sense of underlying belonging, but also longing at the same time, and I feel it to be very comforting in a very strange and unsettling way. So as praised as that movement in his work is, I really just tend to appreciate his use of light and color and drama. Also this, like I said, this underlying coding, it seems like on all his paintings that have a certain darkness to it, a certain sense of drama, I should say. To even emphasize further on his technique and the way that his style is portrayed whenever I do see it, more and more of that appreciation for the ideas and the skill set of just using light and tones and colors and movement, of course storytelling, the particular figures and characters and iconic historical figures that you see in his work. You can really get an idea for what he was trying to portray in terms of emotions, through movements, through placements, through colors, through tonal selections that he made in these paintings. And because of the way that he was portraying these figures in these moments, historical, for a lot of people, factual moments, they were controversial, they were his own. I feel that he is a very important artist for me to kind of touch base with again and understand and relearn just all that he had to offer in terms of his skill set and his paintings. Because I really want to understand where I can kind of determine how I see things, how I see culture, religion, beliefs in my own heart, in my own mind. I have the utmost respect for this artist, and I know many others do as well, and he will always signify a top source in terms of those artists that began movements and set the precedence for what was to come and what we were to be inspired of. And how any artist of any type, of any culture, of any walk of life, of any style, can portray their art how they wish and portray their art exactly how they intend to and in exactly the style that they wish to portray. Carrying on in terms of a classical painter, but a Norwegian painter, is this artist who gives me even further in depth the emotions and portrayals of dread and melancholy tones and atmosphere to his work. And this particular Norwegian painter is of course Edvard Munch. If you will, I would say it's also a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of mirroring in terms of what I get out of his art, but I don't think I'm really alone in that. I think a lot of individuals who view his work feel exactly the same way, that essentially he's telling a story, confessing, if not crying out, for what he's feeling and what he's seeing and how he wants us to see a certain scene in his paintings. And specifically the artwork that I really see this portrayed in the most is definitely Love and Pain. And I know he had remade that particular painting a couple different times, a few different times. I adore it. It's one of those haunting pieces that is undeniably true to what it's showing. You may get a couple different interpretations from it. I know a lot of people will say it's more vampiric and something that gives off a certain image that might be overwhelming or striking, but I find it to be very romantic and inviting and also intriguing. There's a lot to unpack in it, and you can kind of take what you will from it in terms of how you kind of connect with it in a way. To me, I find it to be super successful in terms of giving you emotions right away, conveying a specific message or conveying a certain sense of passion and intensity, if you will. He seemed to be really rejected by critics in terms of all of his art and in terms of him as an artist himself, which I find to be really devastating, but also expected, especially at the time that he was painting in late 1800s. He was really doing things, if you will, ahead of his time. And I suppose that's why I connect with it so much, because it does seem like he is translating far into the future, even to now, from when he did originally paint these. But like I said, he was really rejected in terms of his art by viewers, critics, anything. Upon doing my research on him again, I did discover that he did have a lot of mental challenges, a lot of tortured emotions that kind of were passed down to him from his family and other generations, which I of course can relate to as well. So it is really important to even see an artist like this so long ago in history that is so admired now, but was rejected at the time and still did what he did to express his own feelings and his own anguish, that I find it so inspiring that he did in some way overcome that and still decide to make such beautiful art. Similar to Van Gogh, I feel like he is definitely just an artist that I hold very close to my heart. So overall, I can just really appreciate him in terms of his story, and I take a lot of inspiration from him. And I definitely just want that Love and Pain painting like framed in my room somewhere. Now, to fast forward a bit into more of the postmodern scene and the New York style art scene, this next African American painter and printmaker, textilist, and multimedia artist, and this particular postmodern artist is of course Emile. She definitely focused a lot of her work in terms of her own experiences, her own trials through life, traveling to New York. She portrays these larger than life pieces, these prints, unframed linen displays, along with other mixed medias within those artworks that are just so colorful and gorgeous, but also have such a strong standing, detailed, specific story and experiences within them. She really doesn't hold back in terms of sharing her own stories and her own ideals and her own cultural experiences that she's had to overcome, and for her to really find her own voice in terms of being in New York City at the time during the late 70s to the mid 80s, having a lot of those issues in terms of finding her way into spaces that don't want to accept her and don't want to let her express exactly just the magnitude of what she experiences on a day-to-day basis. New York City was really showing to not be very welcoming to her as an artist, as a teacher, as somebody who wants to make a name for herself in whatever she may entail, to find a place in that city. She really had to overcome that adversity and that pushback in terms of finding her voice, finding her place in gallery spaces as an artist, as a teacher, as an employee, let alone. And in her work, she has such a drastic and apparent way of displaying what it is that she feels internally, externally, all around her. And really, just upon viewing her work now, as much time has passed since then, it is so apparent the struggles and the anguish and the strength she had to withhold to display her own art, to display her own story, to be an individual in the space that she resided in. I think that it's so powerful, and honestly gives me a lot of those reminiscent feelings in terms of Frank Ringgold, who also had those kind of quilt multimedia displays with the figures and the colors and the cultural storylines that she displayed in her work. Both of them kind of mirror each other for me in terms of that message and that overcoming powerful experience that they both withheld. Her art is most definitely the kind of art that I would love to come across one day in a gallery space, because I just want to visualize and get a sense, in a physical sense, of just how large and powerful these pieces would be in person to see. So one day she's on my bucket list to definitely just come upon, turn a corner, and see her work. And especially I would love to see them in New York City, more particularly during a tour or just a whole floor dedicated to just her work. Definitely a huge inspiration in terms of just message and overall strength in her work. So absolutely love her. Now on to another modern artist who had a lot of different mediums to his work. But this particular French artist liked to do more of the landscapes, the collage ideals of artwork, textiles, and even illustrating as well. And this particular abstract French artist is of course Nicolas de Stael. He is a very unique artist indeed, but has a lot of reminiscence to me whenever I see his work. In regards to Mark Rothko, very similar in terms of the kind of shape and blocking aspects of his work, the coloring, and overall the landscape displays that he does are very unique and abstracted that give me that reminiscent feeling to Mark Rothko in a really great way. He did a lot of that thick impasto kind of artwork. He would do techniques and textures to his work that was very unique to what he was trying to portray for his own style. The color blocking is something that I really find appreciation within his work. Overall, I can just really appreciate him for his abstractions and his free-form, stylistic nature. Like a Mark Rothko painting and an Emile painting, I would love to come across one of his works in a gallery and just get the overall nearly sublime feeling I would get when seeing one of his large paintings. Definitely a really important artist to refer to historically in terms of his abstractions and his color scheme choices. And last but definitely not least is another American New York style artist who gives me so much of that powerful, colorful palettes and overall very specifically culturally significant artworks. And please excuse my pronunciation for his name. I want to make sure I try and do it the best that I can. And this final New York style artist is Walter Watts. He is an abstracted and freeform, culturally defining artist. He was very well known in the scene that he found himself in New York City. In the same regard to how I've explained the last two artists having a reminiscence to another, he had a lot of those reminiscent feelings, connections, and even friendships with other artists of the time that he was in, more specifically Jean-Michel Basquiat. And I, of course, adore Jean-Michel, so I was really excited to see that they had a great connection in terms of the time that they were both making art. And I can see a lot of that similarity in terms of styles and expressions, inspiration that they got. Ouattara seemed to combine that American and Western style of artwork, but also giving it his own personality, his own technique to every object, every shape, every line, every texture, every color that he displayed. A lot of his work gives that classic, historic, and iconic New York feeling. And again, like I said about the last two artists, I would love to just come upon one of his artworks one day in New York City in a beautiful gallery and just see how beautiful and detailed his work can be in person. I feel like I would get a lot of that inspiration in terms of just getting a sketchbook and getting down some freeform figures, getting down something in terms of an uninhibited but intentional style that is within each of us as an artist. And he definitely displays that and succeeds at that tenfold. He has such a way of showing his own unique style, his own, like I said, uninhibited but intentional markings, intentional figures and ideals and pictures and visuals, really. He translates so much of his own spirituality, his own nature, his own ideas, his own visuals, his own culture in his work. And it gives such an impactful message every time you might see his work. And if you focus a little bit longer, you might get an even more in-depth message upon doing so. And once again, and just to kind of finalize my overall ideals of him and how I even feel, is that he was really a leader in art, a leader in terms of the new age, modernism, abstraction, New York style, and uninhibited, true to yourself, inspiring art technique. And that wraps up December. I'm so happy to have these 5 artists out. And I'm so happy that majority of them really are reminiscent to other artists, like I said, that I've done more spotlight focuses on in the past months before. I think it's really special that not only do some of them cross paths, but even just physically they may cross paths, but artistically they do, and visually and culturally. And I think that that's such a special thing, especially if they come from different periods of art, different times, different locations, and culturally specific times even. I find it to be so impactful to kind of discover these artists on their own, but even intertwined, and kind of take away your own inspiration from them and kind of understand where you may parallel in terms of your own story as an artist, and where you may fit in and how you can express your own cultural ideas, your own visuals, your own personality in your work. And I know it's December, and although these artists might not have specific holiday themes to them, I think in some ways they can really apply to the change of a year going by soon with New Year's coming up, and also just the idea that you spend so much time in every period of your life trying to figure out everything at once. At least I do that. And a lot of these artists have had to develop their talents and had to develop their placement in the world in the time periods that they came from. So I think that that's kind of the takeaway that I come with this is that I'm really having to see that I'm not alone in terms of still discovering who I am in my own personal life, but also in my artistic life, in my own artistic style and discography even. So I think it's really special to kind of pinpoint and look at these artists towards the end of the year and just keep that in mind. So I'll definitely try my best to keep it in mind because I struggle with it as well. And yeah, that's it. Happy holidays, y'all. Enjoy, be nice. And don't freak out too much that the year is already gonna end and it's already gonna be 2023. Don't worry, you're not alone. We are all going through this together. And stay tuned for my final 5 Spotlight Artists of the Month, which will be January next month. I know it'll be the start of the year, but the end of me doing a whole year of this. So I'm really excited for that. I'm gonna try and make it extra special, so yeah. Okay, y'all, bye.